There we go. No way. Time to win. I need my team to get a few more picks here, dude. Especially this ballpoint is probably our best bet. Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, we're probably gonna lose. I forgot about the vertical hitbox. Oh, we might be able to win. I think we won. Oh, there's a chance. Let's go, bros. Now you can either say, this is an example of why Turf War is not competitively viable because you won the game in the last 10 seconds, or you can say, that's on the enemy team for feeding at the end and dying and giving us the wipe. And if you choose to say the latter, then good for you, because that's what they did. They gave us the wipe and they threw the game. If they just held back in court or something, we would have lost. Alright, 52. Turf War's an interesting mode, though. And I'm honestly not sure if it needs a knockout mechanic or not. Like, if you lose in the last 30 seconds, it truly comes down to, did you feed? Most of the time, at least. There are the times where you get, like, cheesed out of a good hold. But I would think most of the time, like, as long as you don't feed in the last 30 seconds, you should still hold what you have, right? Think about it. Isn't that really how most pushes are given up? It's by one team like pushing a little too far. That's why you see pushes that'll last the entire game, is because the team that held just never let go or never made that many mistakes. Yeah, now, like, as long as we don't push too far up and cover everything that we can, we should win the game, because we wiped them with 30 seconds to go. Now, though, the opposite might happen, because we didn't move up far enough. It's gonna be closer. Probably. Never mind, because they can't... They have to try to force their way in, and they can't do that. Like, I think if you think about the mode like that, then it makes, like, a whole lot of sense. Now, we could have easily just fed our brains out, and then given them, like, a good 5 to 10 seconds to cover, like, half of mid and have them win the game. But because we kind of just held what we had already and knew that it was enough to win the game, we didn't have to do that. And we didn't do that, and we won the game because of it. I don't know, I think it's interesting how Turf War works, especially towards the end. It's not really like any other mode. Which I think is why it gets some of the hate it does from comp, but I think is also why it should be played, really. Because it really tests who knows their fundamentals. I do think if we played comp in... Or I do think if we played Turf and comp, then we probably should ban Shifty Station. I also think that because it's not played that much as a competitive mode, like, there's still a lot to be figured out about it. Like, what kinds of weapons could be good, right? Because I think a weapon like my own weapon, right, could be really good on Turf, even though it doesn't paint the most. Like, if you pair it with, like, a Splash, and, like, maybe... I don't know, maybe, like... If you pair it with, like, a Splash-O-Matic and, like, custom dually sculptures or something, like, you could probably make this work. And I mean, all these... I say ban Shifty Station if it's played in competitive, not because I don't like the gimmicks, but because I think there's just too many of them. Like, if you're gonna play with all these gimmicks, then it's just too much, I think. Yeah, I wonder what, like, a good, like, comp viable, or, like, a competitive Turf War comp would be, right? Because especially in NA, people think of Turf comps as just being, like, 4 paint-heavy weapons, and I mean, like, while that comp isn't necessarily bad for Turf, like, eventually you're gonna run out of Turf to paint, right? So where that comp falters is after you get into a situation kind of like this, where I've established control of this area, right? And, like, after, let's say I was a junior, right? After I paint that left side there, like, what else am I gonna do? Whereas with something like the weapon I'm playing right now, 96, I can hold the area instead of just look for more to paint. And that's where weapons like this really shine, right? Is that once they're out, they can't get back in. And as long as we don't feed in these last 30 seconds, we win the game. Yeah, like, there's a way to play Turf War correctly. There's definitely a way to play Turf War correctly. It's just the West doesn't want to play it correctly, so we don't. And whenever we do play it, we always complain about losing in the last 30 seconds. And I mean, sometimes that is inevitable, right? I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I'm just saying it's usually avoidable. Because especially if you go, like, take it into a comp scenario, you're going to have players that are so good that, like, especially if they play something like Firefin, like, they'll get a pick, and then their entire team will just be able to snowball, like, a 15-second comeback. And whether or not, like, even if the opponent is positioned well, right? Like, and but that's what makes it interesting, right? Is that how do these teams find a way to potentially break back in and, like, make a last-second comeback, you know? Like, modes like Rainmaker already have that kind of functionality. Or kind of gameplay mechanic of, like, a last 30-second comeback. I do think, though, that no overtime mechanic is for the best. For this mode. The moment you include an overtime mechanic, it just ruins it. And the only place a knockout mechanic would really be useful in Turf is in, like, Splatfest casual. Or just solo queue Turf War environments. Because you will get games in just random solo queue that are completely one-sided. Now that's for a variety of reasons, because Turf just pulls from the general player base that queues, rather than splitting people up into ranks like solo queue does. But I guess the question is, how do you disable that in a private setting, right? Unless it, like, if it's not hard-coded into the game, how do you disable? Or I guess if it, no, let me rephrase. If the knockout disable is hard-coded into the game, how do you disable it for private matches? Because I think in a proper competitive setting, there shouldn't be a knockout mechanic. Because when you're playing it in a scrim or tournament environment, you're not playing it to have fun. You're playing it to win. I mean, you are playing it to have fun, but you're also playing to win, right? So if you, like, to get as much time as possible to win, rather than just have the game end in a knockout. Oh, frick. That's another valuable thing. People checking their maps.